Alright folks, welcome back to this React Native tutorial for beginners. So far we've installed Java SDK, we've installed Node Package Manager, we've installed the React Native CLI, the command line interface, we've installed Android Studio and the Android virtual device, which as you can see is running here. The next step is we're actually going to create a React application, a React Native application, and run it on our virtual device. Okay, so we're going to start by opening up a terminal window, and we're going to create a directory for our projects. Okay, so we're going to, now you can place this directory wherever you like. I like to place it in my documents folder, so I'm going to change directory to documents, and I'm going to make a directory called projects. I'm going to change directories to that projects directory, and in there I'm going to make a directory called React Native. And cd into that directory. Alright, now we're going to create a React Native project, and we do that simply with the following command. And let me zoom in a bit so it's easier to see. So the following command, React Native init, and the name of your project. Let's call it project 1. And this will take about a minute to create everything. Alright, so it looks like we're done here. It takes about a minute or two. We have a few more instructions. To run your application on Android, have an Android emulator running. Check. We have that running. Or a device connected. So if you want, you can physically connect an Android device, be it a phone or a tablet, and run the following command: React Native run Android. So let's go ahead and do that. React Native run Android. Oh, I have to be inside the project. cd into your project and then run that command, React Native run Android. And it's going to try to build this application for us, and it should take about a minute or two. You may run into some errors at this point. If you do, the best thing to do is to copy down the error and paste it into a Google search. Chances are someone else has run into that error as well. This is one of those pain points here that just really common to run into something. Remember, we're working with the Android SDK, and we're working with Node, so there are two different environments that we're trying to make interact and work with each other. So it's definitely a for problems. I'm sure these things will get ironed out as we go, and once you iron it out on your machine, chances are you won't run into those issues anymore. So it looks like we're at 82% here, still building the application, and patience is a virtue here. And navigate over or switch over to your emulator, and telling us cannot get the batch bridge. Make sure your bundle is packaged correctly. The reason it's telling us that is because the application server is not actually running yet. So we'll need to run that with the following command, React Native start. This is actually going to start our application server. So it's telling us here it's running the package on port 8081. Alright, so switch over to your emulator and hit the reload button. Now you can hit the reload button or simply press RR on your keyboard. And it's going to start downloading all the files. And there we are. Welcome to React Native. And we are up and running. So it's telling us to get started. We edit the index.android.js file. We can also double tap while we're in this window here for the emulator. Double tap R on the keyboard to reload it. And it'll just fetch that bundle again. So let's open up our Atom text editor. And add a project folder. Now we get to your projects folder. There it is. And select OK. And here we have our entire project that the React Native CLI built for us. So, real quick here, we have our test folder. We have our Android folder. Now this Android folder has the entire Android application. So if we were to build an application using Android Studio from scratch, this is somewhat what it would look like. We have our source file, our main folder, Java folder, which has our Java files. We have our main activity. We have our resources. So yeah. But we're going to ignore that. And if we were building an iOS project, this would be the same files. Now, I'm not familiar with iOS development, so I can't really give you a breakdown of what these folders do. This is what, from here down, is what we're going to be concerned with. So we have our node modules. These are all the modules that are installed in this program. We have our index.android.js. So this is the actual starting point of our Android application. We also have our starting point for our iOS application, which in this tutorial we're not going to worry about. But if you're developing for both platforms, you would modify both these separately. You have your package.json, which is obviously going to dictate all your dependencies. Right now we have React and React Native. Dev dependencies, name of the project. You should be familiar with a package.json. If you're not familiar with it, with what that does, I would read up on it. It is important. We have our Babel RC file. What Babel does, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of allows us to write the language that React Native uses, which is, I believe it's called JSX. Okay, so let's get back to that index.android.js. Okay, so we have our default class here, which extends our component, and we're importing a component from React. Okay, all these other things, the app registry, style sheet, text, and view, are imported from React Native. If you've used React before, you should be familiar with what a component does, and you should be aware that you always, at least in this one here, you want to return, you always want to have a render function, which is going to return your view. So this is what it's returning, our view. So we can delete this all this text here, and we're going to create our own text. Save that file. Now, one thing you have to remember is you have to make sure that all your text, images, basically imagine these as your div files or your div containers are within one single component, okay? Or not component, one single container, okay? So go ahead and save that, return to your emulator, refresh it with the R key, and there you go. Hello from whatever the text you entered. Okay, now this does look a little different. It's JavaScript, but it's a different form of JavaScript. It's called JSX, and what it does, it kind of combines the business logic with the view presentation and the styling. And you have some here that looks like JavaScript, some here that looks like HTML, some here that looks like CSS. Yeah, it's a little odd to get used to at first, but after you play with it for a while and get the hang of it, and you actually may start liking it. It's strange when you're used to separating all your concerns. You know, you have your style sheets separately, you have your JavaScript in one file, your HTML in a separate file, and now we're kind of bundling it all together. The reason being is in React Native and React somewhat too, you kind of keep your concerns bundled together as components. So I know it's a dumbed down way to say it, but you'll get the hang of it. So that's it so far. We set our development environment up by installing Java, the Java SDK version 8. We installed the Node package manager that came with it. With that, we were able to install the React Native CLI command line interface. We also installed Android Studio, the Android SDK, and we installed the Android virtual device, which we have running here. And we created our first React Native application. Once again, you may run into some issues. One of the more common issues I see is missing the build tools. I'm going to go ahead real quick and show you how to fix that if you run into that, although you may run into other issues. Quickly open up Android Studio. And you'll run into this when you're trying to build your project. It's telling you that you can't find build version or the build kit version 23 point whatever it is. Real easy to fix that. Just open up Android Studio, click Configure, SDK Manager, tab over to SDK Tools, select Show Package Details, and then just make sure that 23.01 or whichever one it's complaining about is installed. Okay, that's the most common issue I see. But other than that, you may run into some other issues. Just make sure you copy it, paste it into a Google search, and someone else is guaranteed to have run into it. Remember, this is a brand new or somewhat new environment that we're developing in, so things may change. If you're viewing this tutorial a year from now, chances are things have changed. So feel free to use it as a guideline at that time, but just keep that in mind. Okay, folks, thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe, or please subscribe, share, like, comment, all that good YouTube stuff, and we'll see you next time. This is the end of this tutorial series. I will start a new series on creating a basic, React Native application, but that'll be a whole separate series. Okay, thanks for watching.